Welcome to Financial Advisor and Pastor Walk into a Bar, Guatemala 2025 Part 2. In this episode, Pastor Jason and Financial Advisor Benjie finish up their conversation about Jason's recent mission trip to Guatemala. Let's listen in.
It's Central America. So I was going to say Southern Hemisphere, so we're talking about winter, but I mean it's Central America, so what was the weather like?
So, I mean, I can't say with absolute certainty, but like 85 degrees was like the hottest it got one day.
Nice.
Yeah, it was, and you'd wake up in the morning and it's a little cool, you know,
Yeah.
and you're like, this is awesome. And of course it is more of a tropical environment, very green, very lush, banana trees like crazy, lots of fruit trees. I mean, it was absolutely incredibly gorgeous.
Nice.
I mean, just such a beautiful area, and you're in the mountains. And so we were staying in a town called Antigua, and Antigua is very much a tourist hotbed, if you will. So we would stay in town at a hotel, but then of course we'd go out to the outer edge. So and in town was more in a valley. So Antigua's in a valley. Okay. But then we would go to the outer edges of Antigua where the mountains really begin to go up. Yeah. And so in that, you know, we're hanging out all day, climbing the mountain up and down, doing different stuff. But man, it's a beautiful, beautiful area. Okay. And it's a very different landscape and environment than what we're used to here in the concrete jungle. So.
Yeah, I know it's flat here, and it's not as the colors aren't as vibrant.
Yes.
For some reason, it's same
very
sun,
true.
Right? Same greenery. Just not as vibrant for some reason.
Yeah. And the depth of the scenery, because you've got the mountains and all that stuff. I mean, there's and you look in the distance, and as you look in the distance, as you see the different mountains. It's almost like being in Colorado, where you see the different mountains at different depths. Yeah. You know, because of the distance away, and then you know, all left to right, and then of course, you know, where we were at, there's still an active volcano. Yeah. And so it's not like exploding all the time, but it like every 10 minutes it will kind of erupt a little bit. Mm-hmm. So in the morning you see, or during the daytime you see the plume of smoke happening, but then at nighttime you can see the lava flow happening.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
I remember you sent me pictures of that.
Yeah.
Last year. So that was pretty awesome. Awesome as in, you know, that made me think, you know, here we go. Because I was looking at, in my Bible study yesterday, we were talking about Romans 1, and I think it was Psalm 19:1, where it's talking about the glory of God is evidenced in nature around us. You know?
Romans 1 verse 20. For since the creation of the world his invisible attributes, that is, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived, being understood by what has been made, so that they are without excuse. Psalm 19 verse 1. The heavens tell of the glory of God, and their expanse declares the work of his hands. And
this idea that you just have to look to see what God's done, and to deny it gets him angry. That's where Romans comes into play. You know, but talking about nature and whatnot, what you're seeing and how you're showing it, and then I guess the word awesome is appropriate, because it's you know, God's work, which is awesome. Yeah. I think of when you're talking about the different hills and stuff, and this is like a sidetrack. I don't think it has anything related to God other than here's God's glory, you know, with His creation. Is that when we were in Hawaii a few years ago, we had some friends that this is their first time going to Hawaii. They've been to other tropical places before, but Hawaii was the first time. And we were coming down the side of the mountain hill, you know, the mountainside. So we're higher elevation. We're coming down, and you see the valley that goes to the beach, and then you see the ocean. And he had said, he's looking at the horizon. He said, "Is that the ocean?" And I thought it was weird because I grew up in Hawaii, and you know, I've seen it all the time. I thought, yeah, of course it is. But then I come to the realization, oh, okay. Yeah, that's a different thing to see. When you're looking off into the horizon here in Texas, all you see is flat land. Yes. And then you go someplace else, like Colorado, and you see the mountains. But then here you are in Hawaii, and somebody's looking off into the horizon, and it's the ocean, right? And that's all you see, and it's just the kind of realization. In my head, my realization is, oh, we're on this tiny little island, and the ocean is humongous, right? So big that it just takes the whole horizon. And if you've never seen it before, I guess it's kind of wild to see that, right? Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just the beauty of it. One of the cool cool experiences that we had. I don't know how many people would think it's cool, but we got to experience an earthquake while we were there. And it was, so leading up to the trip, there was some conversations and concern about all the earthquakes that were happening. Thankfully, it didn't get too terribly bad, but we had it was either 3.2 or a 3.3 one night while we were there. And so we're laying, and I'd never experienced an earthquake before. And so, we're sitting there laying in bed, I had my bed and the boys had their bed, and we're laying in bed and we're just watching a little TV, and then all of a sudden you hear some noise. And it sounded like a semi-truck was really, really close by, and then all of a sudden the bed just kind of starts to shake for a second, and then it disappears. And I was like, whoa, did y'all feel that? And they're like, yeah, what was it? I was like, boys, that was an earthquake. So we got to experience our first earthquake, and it was very short-lived. But I was like, holy cow, just the power. I mean, watching or knowing that those are two tectonic plates or whatever rubbing, and the way that the whole earth rumbles, or at least in that general vicinity, I'm like, this is incredible.
It made me think of that scripture, the earth groaning for his return.
Yes.
But that's wild to get on see that you talk about, the beauty of what the landscape is, the rolling hills, the rolling mountains, the mountainscape. You're over there. I'm sure you got like ocean views in some places that you.
Not where. No, we didn't see the ocean. Yeah, because where we're at, there was no ocean view. Now, of course, flying in, you get to see it a little bit, but besides that.
Well, you got to see a pretty vast amount of landscape.
Oh yeah.
With the volcano that was going on. The mountains that you were seeing, and then the earthquake.
Yeah.
So now I think about Elijah. Is it Elijah? No, Elisha. When he was the guy that with the E, who was in the E being the first name, was in the cave, and God had
Elijah.
all this.
Yep, Elijah.
Yeah.
Yep.
All the nature had come by back and forth, and he saw all of the different things, and the one thing that came that took him was the still small voice. With him coming in.
1 Kings 19 verses 11 to 13. So he said, Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And behold, the Lord was passing by, and a great and powerful wind was tearing out the mountains and breaking the rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind there was an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of a gentle blowing. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak, and went out, and stood in the entrance of the cave. And behold, a voice came to him and said, What are you doing here, Elijah?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned Elijah. You and I haven't even talked about this.
Okay.
But so every morning, except for Sunday, so we landed on Friday, and then on Saturday morning, Monday morning, Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, we would do a devotion just as a group.
Okay.
And so Sunday we didn't do a devotion because we were going to church.
Yeah.
But so Monday, so I did Monday. My son Caden, or excuse me, I did Saturday. My son Caden did Monday. A young lady by the name of Alicia did Tuesday, and then one of our other pastors, Derek, who I get to work with at our campus, he did Wednesday.
Okay.
But Saturday for my devotion, I talked about the story of Elijah, where one moment he's casting or he's calling on God to reveal Himself through the sacrifice and the fire coming down, and then just fast forward a few days later, he's running away and he's scared for his own life and he's hiding in the cave, and so. That story was what I did, and basically the talking point was this idea of God speaks in many different ways.
Yeah.
And in one way, He spoke through fire from heaven, burning up the 450 prophets of Baal. But then in this one, He spoke through the still small voice. So two totally different ways of hearing God speak.
Yeah.
But yet, the question is, are we listening for His voice? And so I really just challenged our group, said, hey, today and through the rest of this trip, we're going to have opportunities where we're going to hear God speak.
Yeah.
Whether He does it audibly, whether He does it through another person, whether He does it through your experience, or whether He does it through an interaction with somebody. God has the ability to speak in so many different ways.
Yeah.
But is your heart and your mind and your eyes and your ears open to how He chooses to speak to you?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of cool that you mentioned Elijah, and that was what I did the Devo on.
Well, I would be so bold to say that maybe somebody that's listening is going through that same story,
Yeah.
and here's God trying to speak to him or her and say, hey, pay attention and listen, because there's a message that he's trying to tell you. It makes me think about, having these conversations with you. It just kind of reminds me of where my head was at when I was in El Salvador. And then other times during the year where it's just like being close to God is very evident. And I feel like I'm in stride with him. And then there's a lot more times during the year where it feels like I'm trying to catch up or I'm just not at pace with him and where he wants me to go. And I just think of that scripture with, I think it's the different soils, where he talks about the worries of this life, the deceitfulness of wealth and the desires for other things come in and choke the word and make it unfruitful. And I think of being in El Salvador last year is like being removed from those day-to-day type sort of stuff that make me sort of reset and realize, that I'm missing a lot of what he's trying to tell me because I'm so caught up with what is in front of me.
Yeah.
And then I come back here and it's just like whatever is in front of me is just grabbing my attention, right? Yeah. And the last few weeks have been that way, where what's in front of me has been grabbing my attention and trying to pull me away from what God's been trying to put forth, or his truth that's always been there, and I'm just getting drawn away from it. So it's a good reminder. I think it's helpful to take a step back. I think that's another reason why a mission trip is a good thing, because it's sort of like a reset. Kind of give you a better perspective.
And man, what was so cool? So this year is last year's trip.
Yeah.
We had between my son Caden and this young lady Alicia, who had just graduated high school.
I was just going to ask you. So she went back again.
She went back again.
Okay.
Yeah. And in addition to going back again, I had asked her to do one of the devos, and she did a phenomenal job. It was so cool. One night she had stayed, so we went out to dinner one night after the day of working, and as she had said, hey, I'm gonna hang back. And because then the next morning she was going to be doing her devotion. Yeah. So she said, I'm going to hang back and work my Devo. And so she'd asked me to get her some food and just bring it back. So I texted her and I jokingly said, hey, we've got the charbroiled, armadillo ready for you. Just, and so she just responded back and she just said, why would you say something like that? LOL, I'm stressing over here, And so I just called her while we're at the restaurant, and I just said, hey, you okay? You wanted to, And she's like, man, I've never done anything like this before. And I just want it to be right. And so I got to talk with her through that and got to pray with her at the end. It was just really, really cool. But it was one of those moments where seeing her do that devotion the next morning and seeing the work she had put into it. And the thing that I'd really encouraged her with and prayed with her about was, hey, here's the deal. You have a responsibility to share the things that God's laid on your heart. Yeah. What happens with that is not your responsibility. Yeah. That's what God does. Yeah. If you say the things that He's called you to say, and you've prepared and you worked hard to adequately speak the things that God's called you to speak, then you got to let that go. You can't perfect it. You can't try to, wordsmith it so much so, and plus it's your first time as well. But you can't wordsmith it so much so that this is a really polished devotion. You just got to trust God. And so it was really, really cool. The next morning she does her devotion, and you can tell she's nervous. Yeah. But man, she knocked it out of the ballpark. Nice. And it was so incredible. So my point being is Alicia was back, my son Kane was back, but in addition to the two of them, we had 7 other high school and college age students. We had 2 more. So there was groups of 3, which was really cool how God was the Trinity. So we had 3 college age girls. Yeah. We had 3 high school boys. Okay. And we had 3 high school girls. Yeah. And so we had 3 groups of 3, which I was like, all right, God, I see what you're doing there. Nice. But watching those students and young adults all get to know each other, a bit more was really, really encouraging. Getting to see them, 3 of those 9 students, 3 of them had never really gotten involved in the branch youth or even just gotten involved in the church really. They just kind of attended. So seeing them, one of the comments that they made later on I never really got involved at the branch when we were attending, because 2 of them were college age students. They said, but now I feel connected.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, this is awesome. But what God did, watching those 9 students, 6 high school, 3 college age,
Yeah.
what God did in them was incredible. And they served, they worked hard, they led in devotions, they got to know each other and build deep friendships with one another.
Nice.
And it was for all of us adults. There were times where we would just kind of sit back a little misty-eyed watching what God was doing and just going, man, how awesome is this? You know, I was so stinking proud of our youth.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So it's you had a youth group mission trip.
It was not intended to be that way, but
Yeah.
it happened. And it was, so of the 26, there's 25 or 26, I can't remember.
Okay.
But yeah, 9 of them were high
Okay.
school to college age.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice. Well, at least the adults still outnumbered them. So.
Yeah. and so you try to build the perfect scenario in your mind of what should happen and how it would happen and all that. And then God just kind of throws it all to the side and says, but here's what's perfect for me.
Yeah.
And we got to experience that. And it was really, really cool. So
I'll ask Davis to pull up that scripture, but the one about we have our plans, but God,
yes.
I guess, something our steps.
Proverbs 16, verse 9. The mind of a person plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we basically that idea of we lay out the plans, but then God reorders them. And yeah.
Nice.
You've been listening to Financial Advisor and Pastor Walk Into a Bar. As always, Benjie and Jason raise more questions than answers because God has a message for you, and you're not going to hear it unless you open the Bible and read it for yourself. Thanks for listening.